See you, Albert.
No. So
So
may
I,
I may I
yes,
introduce may I introduce Joan, since I had the pleasure of
please.
her taking me through a very dark, unpaved, rough road at night, a shortcut back to the hotel, but also a pleasure of seeing the drugstore that she has set up. So Joan is one of our scholars. She's been out for some time now, studied midwifery, and actually really interesting. I'd like Joan to talk to us about how the regulations are changing about working in the field of midwifery, because it impacts CROSO's work. But so Joan volunteers as a midwife in a private clinic, but then she has also been very successful in setting up what you call a drugstore, correct? We wouldn't call that
Yeah,
in the United States. It's a small shop that sells both over the counter and prescription medications, kind of in a neighborhood setting. And
Hmm.
then also services some people who might need Joan to go give injections in their home and those sorts of things.
Okay.
So she's was successful in her midwifery training. She has a certificate in midwifery, and she's a very successful entrepreneur and just a very pleasant person to spend time with. So I was very happy to do that in Bali.
That's great.
So
I'm glad you were able to provide that nice introduction. And I know for me, when I was reading the notes and reading about Joan's work and some of the messages that you shared when your trip, Sharon, I was thinking it's kind of like a kiosk or like a shop where you can kind of raise up the door. And at least in the pictures I was seeing on, doing an internet search with Google and Google Maps and kind of, walking around virtually, trying to participate in this. So Joan, I'm glad you're here, and it sounds like you're
yes.
doing some really interesting work.
Yeah, I'm so glad meeting you too.
So what's next for you, Joan? I know you have plans because you would really like to do more in the field of midwifery. Um,
Yes, currently, since I'm still volunteering, maybe my next other plan, it would be for me to get an opportunity to go back to school and I do a diploma, since it's very hard for us as certificate holders currently in Uganda, to work in other facilities. Yes.
and how long would it take you to upgrade your credentials to a diploma?
1.5 years. If I continue with midwifery, then if I'm to change and do other clinical medicine, it will take 3 years.
And your ultimate goal?
My ultimate goal is to become a gynecologist.
Oh,
Good for you, Joan. I hope that goal I hope you're able to reach that goal.
Yeah, that's really
Amen.
amazing.
you were
Yes.
also you were also talking about opening I don't know what all the different levels are called. I don't remember. A clinic that you could have some beds.
Yes. Yes, I would. That would be possible if I'm able to have a diploma in clinical medicine. That I can use the license to do that. But for certificate level, it would be very hard.
And what kind of license did you need for the drugstore?
The license I used as an enrolled midwife.
Okay.
The license qualifying for a certificate in midwifery.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. So these steps from certificate to diploma to bachelor is not, or even beyond bachelor's, is not as, I don't think we talk about it in the United States as much. It exists, there are these various levels, but we tend to not understand it in the way that we know this. It's very important for the scholars, because Brenda was supposed to be with us today. She also went from certificate to diploma to bachelor's, and doing one step at a time.
Yes.
So is that more common among our scholars, or as a, like if you were looking more widely across the country of Uganda, is that normally the case? Or is it possible to just, you know, with your marks on your record to just apply directly to a bachelor's program? Just kind of curious, is that something that our scholars are following this path, and kind of how that compares more widely? I'm not sure. Joan, if you know among your classmates what people's plans are, or what you've noticed. Richard, if anyone has any feedback on that, I'm curious to know.
About what? Pardon?
I think
I would like,
go ahead.
yes, I would like him to pardon me again.
So okay, I think his question is it possible to go directly to the bachelor's degree? Is that, and in Uganda, when you look at all your students, not only the CROSO scholars, but all students, what's the most common path? To go step by step, or to go immediately to a bachelor's program?
The most common path is to go direct to the bachelor's, but there is the specific point the universities will need if those children can afford to go to high school.
I see.
Yes, you study from senior 1 up to senior 4. If you cannot afford going to senior 6, you can branch and do a certificate.
Okay.
Then you can. But if you can afford the high school, senior 5 and senior 6, you go to senior, then you get the points the government requires for you to go for a straight bachelor's degree.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know about the point system, but I remember reading, and I guess this is kind of a colonial legacy, because it's very similar in some ways to in the UK, how you have the breakdown between the different portions of education. And I know sometimes if you don't make it up to those advanced levels, then you can go into another route and then still kind of make your way into a university, but it might not be the direct route. And like you said, if it's a resource thing, or like I know talking to some of the scholars who have left school and then come back, but I'm just kind of curious, because I know that's one thing we were talking about, how we can support, you know, our scholars and then future scholars kind of knowing what the context is. And if people have big dreams, and we can say, okay, how do you want to do this? Does it make sense to go step by step, or what does the situation demand? So I appreciate you sharing it. It's one thing to read it online, but to hear it from you, I really am. I feel like I'm getting an education here, so that's nice.
Is it also, is the decision to go one direction or the other also financial?
Yes, sometimes it's financial, yes. But most times you can go to high school, but when you fail to get the points they want, it may be hard for you to go straight to the university. Yes.
Or if you can't afford even if you have the points, maybe you can't afford to invest in the bachelor's.
Yes, because it's expensive. Yes.
Darren, did you have any other questions for Joan?
Well, first, Elsa asks in the chat, how many babies has Joan delivered?
Oh, like for this year in this private facility, like 10. Yeah, so because they turn up in private facilities, not like in government. Yes. Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's really wonderful.
I think for the past 6 months.
So more than one a month.
Yeah, more than one a month, yes.
And that's just a volunteer position. So if
Mhm.
you were doing it for your career, you'd be doing more. Yes. Okay, so now you can go back to Albert's question about the challenges for girls to proceed and succeed in school and careers.
So I know we were trying to get an equal number, if possible, of graduates, supporting both the girls students and the boys, young men, young ladies in their education. But when people were telling me about the challenges and the disparities, so if you could maybe share your thoughts.
Okay, the challenge is most of the challenges the girl child is facing. Most times, sometimes it's the finances. Most times when the girl child is not financed enough, while pursuing her career at school, it is a very big challenge since they can easily be convinced by the men who can give them a little, and they will move away from their goals. That is the most challenge I've seen from girls from humble background. Majority of them have failed to reach their goals because they have not been able to afford finances, most times the feeding, the accommodation. So it reaches a point when this girl is on her way chasing the dream, and meets a young man who can be able to facilitate, let me say, the feeding or the accommodation, can easily convince that girl, and the girl will move away from the path to her goal.
Interesting. So I know I was reading a little bit about like international ways people have tried to address these, and it was talking about differences that different governments and organizations will take. In your experience, like what kind of solutions would you address? Because I mean, you've made it this far, and I know CROSO has been part of that. And in your conversation with people at school, like what kind of solutions have they made? Because I know when we're overcoming obstacles, and then you look around and see like who also is still there with you, you're like, wow, like we've really done something, and we're still have dreams of going forward. And as you like look back and talk to the younger girls behind you, like what kind of advice would you give them, or what kind of solutions would you propose as far as like a policy or any kind of support where you're like, if we did this kind of activity, this might help the girl child in a way that she doesn't need any other person kind of distracting her, if that makes sense.
Because I'll take myself as an example. As a girl from a very humble background, I want to appreciate CRO for everything it did for me. As CROSO came in to provide for me financially, it gave me accommodation, it gave me feeding, it gave me even school fees. So I advised myself and I promised myself to stay focused, because I was given almost everything that has to keep me at school, and I had to stay focused. And sometimes you talk to the girl and convince them, because even if you advise me and I don't listen, I don't advise myself, sometimes the advice will go astray. You have to talk to the young girl to look at what they want. Since you've provided everything, you've given them, but also as themselves, they have to have targets for themselves, and you advise them to, like after providing everything, let me say, as an example, me, CRO did everything, like CROSO provided for me everything, gave me accommodation, it gave me feeding, it gave me tuition. That only was enough for me to stay at school. Nothing would distract me. Even if someone come with, even if a man would come with, let me say, has come with some little money to convince me, I would not accept, because I'm given everything. I'm given full tuition. I have no excuse to say that this man has come to my life, is going to give me half tuition. No, I have an organization already that is paying fully my tuition. So I have to concentrate. So nothing would set me off the what? My path, because I'm provided everything. That's how I've seen it, that if these young girls are being provided everything, given advice, followed up all the time, because followed up all the time, they will stay at school, because they will have no excuse of leaving their path. Nothing is going to worry me, because I already have the feeding, I already have the tuition with me, I have the accommodation. So my only goal is to focus on what I'm onto.
So,
Yes.
Joan, I think just I told Albert I wanted you on this phone call, and this is why. You're just so impressive. But I have a question about what you said. CROSO comes in late in a girl child's life, after you've already gone through secondary school. I imagine many of these girls move to the other path sooner than that. Would an earlier intervention help? Like, at what age do many of these girls leave school?
Most times the girls leave school during their teenage age. In Uganda, because when you look at the country Uganda, it has the highest number of teenage pregnancy as a country. Teenagers, like even me, since I joined the midwifery profession, I've met a lot of teenage mothers during my practice at school. So most of those children need to be, I think, need to be helped during their early stages. It's more easier to maintain, to provide for them, than just meet them at their, how can I say? But most of the children get off their path during their teenage age.
So maybe when they're 13 years old or 14 or some around that age period. I'm not sure what that corresponds to if you're in school, but I imagine that might be
Yeah,
age
15,
15.
18.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's good to know, like Sharon said. And one question I had, because I know when I was talking to Brenda, she had shared something with me, is when you're in different places, people use different languages and not just English. And especially if you might not have gone to school long enough to know English and read it and write it, how can we do outreach, or how would someone do outreach to these girls and connect with them if they're not in school? Would it be through an organization like CRO? I know the graduate Nora was talking about some of the work that she had done reaching out to girls in different ways. So partnering with someone like her, or what would you think is a good way to communicate this, in addition to being able to provide support if someone was saying, I want to help the girl child, how can I do it? Well, you can support them financially and provide tuition and things, but if we wanted to communicate this more widely so people are aware, I should stick to school and not get distracted. How would you approach that?
You can set up, sometimes you can go to the communities and meet the LOC ones, you organize the young girls around, you do the counseling session with them, you talk to them. Then sometimes you can go to schools, you are given that time to talk to the young girls, advise them, remind them of their dreams. Sometimes we need to be reminded of our dreams. Because if I grew up as a young girl wanting to be a nurse, As I reach my teenage age, I can get wild and forget. But when you counsel me and advise me, at least I'll remember why I want to be a nurse. Most time counseling and advising them. It would be of a good thing. You meet them at schools, in communities, and also they can be invited in organizations like CRO.
When you were that age,
Yes.
did you have many, were you aware of many women that you saw as role models? And where did you meet them? Because I think also seeing women who have succeeded in reaching a dream similar to your own is another way to keep young girls focused.
Yes. One thing, the first role model I ever met was the late Christine.
Let's see art. Yeah.
Oh, that was my role model. And as I kept on studying, going further, I would meet those people that would come to counsel us while at school. So they would give an example that, would you want to be like this? I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. So that kept pushed me going further. But even my background also, I didn't want to be like I was before. That also kept on pushing me, to work so hard. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, but my biggest push was my background. I never wanted to.
Wanting a better life for yourself.
Yes. And another thing, a documentary I read about was Dr. Ben Carson. That was also is my biggest role model.
And can you tell us who Ben Carson is for those of us who don't know? Who is Ben Carson?
Ben Carson was the first neurosurgeon to operate congenital twins, twins that. Yes, he's a neurosurgeon. He was one of the successful neurosurgeons in the world. If you ever read his documentary, during his childhood, he was one of the dullest, he was dull as he thought. But he realized not when he went to the library. He was playing and he picked a stone and he went to the library and read about that stone. So when he went to school, the teacher asked about that stone and everyone in class didn't know. Even the bright students in class didn't know about a story about that stone. So since Dr. Ben Carson had read about it, he raised up his hand and everyone in class laughed because he knew nothing. When he explained the stone, the teacher was amused, and himself, he realized he can do better. He can do better. So he realized knowledge is read. You can read to get the knowledge. You can be better when you concentrate and focus.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story.
Yeah, that is really, I mean, I had known about Ben Carson. He's somewhat famous here in different communities. I remember learning about him as a young student because he's also a person who was, role model to African-American people who are interested in being in the sciences. I had an uncle who was also, a scientist, and he was always telling me, about everyone's contributions, and how you can advance the field. And then you also leave a legacy through that education. But then he had other ambitions. And so I think people know him in many different ways here in the States. But that's really cool to hear, that as a person who is a role model to you. I think that's just a really amazing thing with culture and knowledge, is that it can just be shared and shared. Yeah, I guess as we wrap up, we've been on here for about an hour, and I know people have other things going on in the day. But if anyone else, Richard, if you had a question for Joan or Eileen or Elsa or Joan, have a question for Joan.
I am so very proud of you. You have done such a wonderful thing with your life. You just deserve a pat on your back.
No, a big hug.
And
So
I
Joan,
know you're
so
going to
so
go further.
so Joan in Uganda, this other Joan is my mother.
Oh,
Joan.
And she had a long career. She's retired now, but she had a long career as a registered nurse.
oh,
Over 50 years.
So she was one of my role models growing up.
Which makes me very proud.
oh,
Well, I just love thinking about what a role model you are, Joan, in Uganda, to the little girls who are running around at CRO and have a vision that they could be somebody like Miss Joan. And that's a pretty exciting thing to think about. And who knows, in 5 or 7 years, somebody will be filling out an application to become a CROSO scholar and say they were influenced by seeing Miss Joan and the things that she did when she was a midwife and opening a drugstore.
oh.
Yeah, I'm really just very happy to hear you sharing your stories, especially because I think for some careers, like teachers and people who are helping, like you are in this critical time in people's lives as a midwife, they will definitely remember you, even though you might not remember them when you come up to them in the future. But it's really great that you're having all these people send the pictures to you, because in the past few years became a parent, and yeah, it's like yesterday. The midwife and doctors and everyone that were there, being fortunate to have that kind of assistance. It's something I'll never forget. So I really appreciate you sharing your story with us. And yeah, if anyone else has any questions, and if not, I appreciate everyone joining here today.
So Joan, I don't know if you're reading the chat, but Elsa just wrote, "Thank you so much for sharing your work and your thoughts with us today." And I don't know, Elsa, did you meet Joan when you were in Uganda?
No, I didn't.
Actually, I think we did very, very briefly while we were at CRO, but I was thinking about it. It's been about 5 years. So I think it's been a while.
Yeah.
So you might, if you did meet her, it was before she had all this great success with her drugstore and everything. So that's, yeah, she's done
Yes,
a lot.
I'm still a student. So this was really exciting to hear about what's been going on in the last few years.
All right. Well, thank you. And Richard, thank you for getting Joan to join us today.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for turning up and having this wonderful conversation with Joan. I'm also discovering that she really is good at really explaining things. She has always been brief when we are sharing, but I've seen her explain and even give a lot of reference. And this is really wonderful. It has been a wonderful evening for us this side, despite the internet issues, but it has been really great. We are grateful that you really turned up to share this time with Joan. Thank you.
Went out for dinner at the source of the Nile. It's Uganda, not Rwanda.
Yes, and interestingly, that place is changed from the time we visited. The government has removed all the people we met, and most of those structures are being removed. They are constructing a new place, and I'm sure next time we shall find a new place. So we are lucky to have been in the old source of the Nile before its renovation.
Yeah.
That's really cool to hear that at least you were there. I mean, I feel that's kind of fascinating. And I know, Sharon, you have to get on, but that is kind of interesting.
Yeah, when you go, Albert, Richard will tell you the whole controversy between. So Rwanda likes to claim that the source of the Nile is in Rwanda, but it is actually in Uganda, according to Richard. So be prepared for a good intellectual debate about it.
curious, Richard, and if you have a moment, there's a situation here. It's not quite the same, but in the United States, their border with Canada, there's a big waterfall, Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
And on one side, it's very much built up and commercialized with hotels and shops. And apparently, from what I heard, I haven't seen it for myself, but the other side is very much more natural. And so it's this kind of back and forth, you know, rivalry, but it is a point of interest. And I'm looking forward to, you know, seeing this for myself.
All right, I gotta run.
All right, take care,
Good to see
Sharon.
you all. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye, Joan. Thanks for
Thank you.
coming. Bye.
Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank
All right, bye, Joan. Thank you. Unless you have anything else for me. No, thank you.